Hello and welcome to Spirit of Life. I'm Mirella Rich. Today our guest is Gerard Koe, who is a family counsellor specialising in addictions, and he's done numerous studies in the US as well. Welcome to the program, Gerard.
Thank you, Mirella.
Did you want to tell us a little bit about your background, like where you've been studying, and then we'll get on to Mary's messages from Medjugorje.
I actually hail from Malaysia, and I've been in Australia now for about 23 years, I think. Well, I studied psychology at Chicago at the undergraduate level and did my master's degree in pastoral counseling at Loyola University of Chicago.
So beautiful.
That's where I studied.
And I'll start with the message, and then you can talk as well about your line of work as well, which would be lovely to hear about.
Mm-hmm.
Dear children, Our Lady's message on February the 28th, 1985. Dear children, today I call you to live the word this week. I love God. Dear children, through love, you will achieve everything, and even what you think is impossible. God wants this parish to belong completely to Him, and that's what I want too. Thank you for having responded to my call. So, and then the next one was the 14th of March. Dear children, in your life, in 1985, dear children, in your life, you have all experienced light and darkness. God grants to every person to recognize good and evil. I am calling you to the light, which you should carry to all the people who are in darkness. People who are in darkness daily come into your homes. Dear children, give them the light. Thank you for having responded to my call. So we'll just leave it with that for the moment, which is some beautiful things about bringing everyone out of the dark into the light, and I think that's a lovely thing. And your line of work is specialising in addictions.
Yes.
So it would be lovely to hear a little bit about how you help people get over addictions, because people can have all kinds of addictions to different things. It doesn't just have to be drugs and alcohol.
Yes.
It can be food, anything.
Well, I like that first reflection about, us loving God. Because most people have absolutely no idea what it is to love God.
Yeah.
It's like an abstract concept. And if you haven't really had a personalized experience of God, then for a lot of people that seems to be just a pious platitude which has no meaning. But as Jordan Peterson would say, to love God is really to seek that which is highest, and to make a commitment and a decision to always do that which is the highest expression of who you're meant to be, and God is ultimately that. So to love God, I suppose, would be to make a decision to seek the highest truth, to seek the highest good, and to seek the highest way of being, And in a sense, many people think that, God is there desperate for our love. No, God needs nothing of our love. But it is our posture of openness to God, our seeking that which is highest, that actually benefits us. So this thing about loving God is not really so much for God, it's more for us. And once we understand that, and understand that to love God is really to be committed towards striving for that which is the highest that we could possibly know and understand. I think that's a good start too.
Yeah, and that's beautiful because it brings out the best in people when they aim for the highest.
Yes.
Not the lowest. Oh, I'm better than this person, or I'm doing better than this person that's doing the low thing. Always aim high, and it always lifts your spirit anyway. Even if you just look up, it lifts your spirits.
Yes. And the other one about that we live in light and darkness, I think at no time in the world is this more pertinent than now. And we see so many instances of darkness. The media just shows us all the dark things that are happening, the religious wars, Russia and Ukraine, and drugs, criminality, all that's bad in the world. And we can sometimes become a bit overly sensitized by that and think that there is no light in the world. But the truth is, there is light. There is goodness. Maybe it doesn't get as much media coverage as the darkness, but there is. And if we have eyes to look, we will find that.
Yeah.
And some people even think that there is no good in them. I see clients every day in my work as a family drug and alcohol counselor who cannot see any positive side to who they are. And, they've come from trauma-laden backgrounds, abuse, sometimes sexual abuse. They've been let down by so many people. They've never been taught how to be resilient, how to be wise, how to have skills to learn to manage their emotions. And all of this in combination with many other factors, a loss of the spiritual, a loss of purpose, existential emptiness, all come together to cause their lives to spiral out of control. They just don't know how to handle the negative emotional states that often saturate and fill their lives. And so when you don't know how to handle all of this, what do? You look for some way of escaping it. And drugs and alcohol come in as very useful. And wouldn't it be nice if there was no consequence? Unfortunately, there is a consequence. It costs a lot of money, damages your health, it messes up your relationships, and it eventually brings the worst out of you. So, but again, when you have come from so much darkness, you don't see any light. You don't think you have anything that's good in you. You're filled with this toxic shame that John Bradshaw talks about, And part of my work as a drug and alcohol specialist is to actually help them to love themselves, to see good in themselves, and to help them to heal from that trauma, that woundedness, help them to learn how to manage their emotional states. And quite apart from that, to find their purpose in life. Because you can have nice emotional states and all that, but if you don't have your purpose, then you'll end up still doing the wrong things in life,
Yeah. We have to go to a break now, but
Sure.
we'll be back with more to talk about that.
Yep.
You're watching Spirit of Life. Stay with us. We'll be back very shortly. Hello and welcome back to Spirit of Life. I'm Mirella Rich. We're talking with Gerard Koe, who is a family counsellor specialising in addictions, and we're also discussing Mary's message from Medjugorje. Welcome back to the program, Gerard.
Yes.
And so another part of the message Our Lady said was, "Dear children, through love you will achieve everything, and even what you think is impossible." So I guess when you have people that are coming to you that have got addictions, maybe they're thinking it's impossible, but you will achieve everything, even what you think is impossible,
Well, I think suddenly that message is a message of hope,
Through love, yeah.
true love, And when you are in these negative emotional states, when you have problems with the law, when you have, broken marriages, broken relationships, you don't really have hope if you have not cultivated or developed yourself from the time you were young. You often feel like a loser. So how do you bring hope to a person who feels that way, who feels they're stuck, who feels that there's nothing they can do to get out of there, that it's all too hard, I think one of the important things is to be able to generate hope. One of the important things I find in my work is that if I cannot help them to feel hopeful, then nothing will shift. And one way I help them to be hopeful is to understand who they truly are. And you might think that that's what do you mean by that, And I think there's a big problem that we have in the secular world, and that is the belief that we are nothing more than just a physical body made up of cells, atoms, and molecules. And we experience life through our senses. And there are many people, very educated people, lecturers, professors, doctors, who think that way, that there's nothing more to us. So of course, if you are just a physical, material body, if I ask you, well, what would be the purpose of your life? You'd probably say, oh, well, look at the animals, survive, pass on your genes, maximize pleasure and avoid pain. Now, we as human beings, if that's how you think that who you are, then that's all life will be, maximizing pleasure and avoiding pain. In fact, there's even a whole philosophy of utilitarianism coming from David Hume, in the 18th century England, who actually talks about, who was an atheist, and a secularist, who believes that that's the purpose of life. But what if that's not true? What if you're also made up of a soul? And this soul is immortal. And this soul has come into your life, into your body for a particular purpose. And that perhaps a lot of the feelings you have of, I'm going nowhere, I'm feeling stuck, and maybe because you didn't do what your soul has come into this life to do. Of course, that's quite a daunting idea. And, if you're a materialist atheist, you'd say, well, where's the evidence for that? And I could show you religious texts that point in that direction, but you'll say that's all a waste of time, But I often tell them, because this is really important, I find, to help people realize they're more than just a physical body. And once you can convince them that you have a soul, then your purpose in life is also different. To grow, to evolve, to become all that you can be, to reach oneness with the divine, with the Creator. And the Creator is there walking with you and guiding you to achieve this. Now that's hope, compared to it's all just nothingness, and there's no good, there's no evil, there's no right, there's no wrong, and as Richard Dawkins would say, emptiness. And so I think part of giving people hope is helping them to know who they are. And I often share with them some of the scientific research in near-death experience, paranormal studies, out-of-body experiences, and stuff like that, undertaken by men of science and women of science who don't have an agenda to try to prove the soul exists. In fact, many of them got into those studies to prove it doesn't exist.
Right.
Yeah. And after about 60 years of research, I think the general consensus now is that consciousness that is separate from the body does exist. They may not call it a soul. There are many who are prepared to call it a soul, but there is something in us that continues, that is quite independent of the body. And so if this is the case, then the whole game plan changes.
And how does science show that? How would they show that the soul
Well,
exists?
it's too long for me to get into that, but if you look at the near-death research, the out-of-body phenomenon that has been studied by many scientific-minded people, there's a lot. There's a lot of research on that you can probably search on the internet and you'll find out. A good book to read by Patrick Glynn, who used to be an atheist scientific philosopher before, called God the Evidence. He says that, to be an atheist is to fundamentally believe there is no God and there is no soul. So, and how science over the last 60 years has actually pushed people back in the direction of God and the soul. When you look at the understanding of cosmology and physics, Big Bang, the entropic principle, the fine-tuning of the universe, you either have to come to the belief that all this came about because of randomness, there was no mind behind the first cause, or you have to say that there was an intelligent mind behind it. But that's about God. The second thing that he addresses in his book, God the Evidence, is that, well, is there evidence for the soul? And he says there's plenty of evidence, and I'd encourage you to go and read that book, Patrick Glynn. But quite apart from Patrick Glynn, well, that was written in the 90s. There's been so much research, afterwards, that has confirmed in the mind of a lot of researchers that your soul does exist. So if the soul does exist, then your purpose is different from just a material purpose.
What sort of response do you get from people when they realise their soul does exist, but we probably haven't got time to do it now because we have to go to a break. But we'll
Okay,
talk
no
about that when we
problem.
get back.
All right.
You're watching Spirit of Life. Stay with us. We'll be back with more very shortly. Hello and welcome back to Spirit of Life. My name is Mirella Rich and I'm here with Gerard Koe, who is a family counsellor specialising in addictions. Welcome back to the program,
Thank
Gerard.
you.
And I just wanted to ask you, first I'll read the other bit of Mary's message where she says, God wants this parish to belong completely to him, and that's what I want too. So when she's saying this to the visionaries in Medjugorje, but she's saying it, I would assume, to everybody. He wants everybody to belong to him. And before the break, we were talking about, science proving that the soul exists. And what would you like to say a little bit about that, the studies that were done on that you were talking?
Well, I did say that I did quote these studies, and a very simple example is that people who have studied near-death out-of-body experiences have kind of conclusively shown that people who are in a state of coma, there's something of them that can leave their bodies and actually experience a number of other things, and then come back, and when they're out of that coma, they can actually tell you things that happened while their soul was wandering around, and this is not just one or two, literally hundreds of them. And how do you explain that? The only way you can because the body never left the hospital bed or the surgical theater. So the only way this could have happened is something of them left the body. So the moment you acknowledge that is a possibility, then you'd have to say, whether you want to call it a soul or not, that something of that person, which is non-material, is able to have a dynamic existence outside of the body.
Yeah.
Okay. And once this is kind of proven empirically, or through at least interviews and research and verification, because you can say that I saw this and I saw Aunt May while I was in the surgery. But if this is corroborated by Aunt May, or then, well, this is quite good evidence. Or if a lady leaving her body goes up to the 10th story in the top of the hospital and looks at the sunrise, while she's having a heart attack there, and sees a red shoe at some corner of the roof. And then when she comes out of this coma, and later on, she asks the nurse, is there a, landing up there? And can you go there and see if there's a red shoe? And the woman goes there and finds a red shoe. Well, that's quite corroborative evidence that there's something in her that was up there. So, but her body didn't leave. So when research like that points to the fact that such things do happen, and if that does happen, then it must point to the fact that there's something of us that is more than just a physical body. So those secular views that we are nothing more than just materialistic existence, destined to just maximize pleasure and avoid pain, is null and void. So you have to ask the next question then, that if we do have a soul, what is the purpose of that soul? And I think that this is where religion and the best of spirituality tell us that we have been created by God and we have a purpose. Eventually, every soul is destined to be one with God. And the only way you can become one with God is if you become godlike. And to become godlike is essentially to commit your life to growing in wisdom, in compassion, and in goodness. Because ultimately, if there are any three qualities that define God, it would be that God is infinite wisdom, infinite compassion, and infinite goodness. So a life that is spent seeking wisdom, and this also can be verified by the life reviews found in the near-death experience of Raymond Moody and numerous other researchers subsequently, that in that phase they were asked, as their lives flashed before them and they were having this review of their lives, to think about their lives in the context of two broad questions, which is, number one, how much have they grown and matured? How much wiser have they become? And number two, how much of a loving and good person have they become? And so if that's what they were hearing in the near-death review, life review, and I think we can take a page from that to inform us about what our purpose in life is. That we are here to fundamentally to grow in wisdom, to grow in love, and to grow in goodness. And in a sense, our commitment to God is really about our commitment to growing in wisdom, growing in goodness, and growing in love. So in a sense then, you can say in an indirect way, science, by verifying the existence of the soul, has now pointed out to us that, well, I suppose you could say that if the soul does exist, then its purpose is very different from a purely materialistic one. And when we don't live that purpose, that's when you get this lost soul, these feelings of emptiness, these feelings of despair. I'm wasting my life, you know. But when you get back to living your soul's purpose, you know, it's not an easy thing, but that's when you start finding love, truth, goodness.
Yes, when you live your soul's purpose.
Yes.
Yeah. People, I guess everybody has this opportunity to find, they can go within. Everybody can
That's
go
right.
within, find God within them, and live this.
And that's another ontological reality, that we human beings, we have a body, we have a soul, and we have a spark of God that is within us. And so, you know, if we truly were to go within ourselves, we will find the divine wisdom that is there. You know, spiritual wisdom that will inform us and give us the solutions to any possible problem that we could possibly face and encounter. But that is the thing, most people have never learned to go within, because, you know, if you live in a very secular, materialistic world, your locus of meaning is always outside of you. It's pleasure, your purpose is pleasure, it's status, it's power.
That's right. And not enough people are encouraged to go within, are they?
Yes.
It's always outside of you, always outside of you. But
That's right.
within is where all the power is, God
Where all the
is.
good stuff comes from.
Yeah, that's right.
As John Bradshaw would say, if you don't go within, you go without.
Love it.
You go without peace, you go without meaning, you go without fulfillment.
Yeah.
You end up living a very superficial existence.
Yeah. And also it stops people from being too reliant on other people for everything,
That's right.
if you go within.
Yes. And this is a message that all the great spiritual traditions, from Christianity to Islam to Buddhism, you know, Hinduism, encourage us to do. You know, that true religion is really about finding God within each of us. If you begin to find God and listen to what God says, well, I can't think of a better way to live your life.
Hallelujah. Thank you so much for coming on the program. We've come to the end of the program now.
My pleasure.
And hopefully we'll see you again sometime soon on the show.
Sure.
You've been watching Spirit of Life. I'm Mirella Rich. Our guest was Gerard Koe, who is the family counsellor and specialising in addictions. I hope you enjoyed the program and enjoyed Mary's messages, which are bringing you light and love. Bye for now.
Bring it to birth and blow where you will. Blow, blow, blow till I be but breath of the Spirit.